All right. Okay, great. Getting started here. Hi, everyone. This is Achutabhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy full moon today, everybody. Happy full moon in the sign of Leo. Today, we're going to talk about the full moon, and I decided I'd do a live stream because it's been a while since I have done one. And yeah, I'm seeing people joining into the chat box. Tell me where you're coming from. I see Oklahoma, Portland, Oregon, and you're in one of my classes. That's awesome. I hope you're liking it. Email if I can ever help with anything in the class. Um, NYC, Myrtle Beach, North London, Macedonia, Wichita, Serbia, Central Valley, California, Seattle. Nice. Dallas. Oh, hey, Andrea. Good to see you. And Shayna. Nice. I'm so happy to see everyone. Well, today I'm going to be talking about the full moon in Leo and Jupiter at the heart of the sun and Venus conjoined with Pluto and the full moon square Mars. It's such a big day. Like it's a really nice day to talk about astrology. So I have a special little talk planned for today. And tomorrow I'll be doing my astrology of February. And then on Monday, we'll have horoscopes for the month coming out. So kind of getting back into a groove. I'm still grinding out Kickstarter readings right now every day. Doing a lot of those. But yeah, I'm feeling excited to get back into the groove here. So I'm going to put the real time clock up on the screen and give you guys a look at what's going on, and we'll talk through it. All right. So here's the big dynamic of the day. It's the full moon in Leo. You can see it forming right here at the base of the chart as it's arranged from Minneapolis right now, where I'm located. And you'll see that it's always opposing the sun at full moon. But you'll also see that the moon or the Jupiter and the sun are conjoined. Actually, this is a configuration called Cazimi, which means that the sun is so close to the conjunction with another planet within 15, 16, 17 minutes of exact. And at that point in time, it's as though Jupiter becomes infused with the sun, or the sun infuses itself into Jupiter, and Jupiter is, as it were, reborn. So it's a big moment in the synodic cycle between Jupiter and the sun. A seed is being planted here that will grow in time, and the fruits of which we will see later, especially around the full moon of the cycle when the sun and Jupiter stand opposite to one another. Let's see when that's going to be, just so you can get a sense of how long this cycle actually takes. So we're going to go ahead by some months here. And first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take everything on the screen away so that you are only seeing Sun and Jupiter. Let me get rid of everything else. All right, so here you can see the two of them together starting their new synodic cycle. Typically what happens in a synodic cycle with the Sun and Jupiter is that because the Sun moves faster, the Sun will make the conjunction to Jupiter. Then you're going to get a retrogradation of Jupiter. And when does it happen? You can always tell it's going to happen, loosely speaking, when the sun is just about to get into a trine with Jupiter after the conjunction. So after that conjunction takes place, the first trine comes through, and then you'll see here's Jupiter having turned retrograde. So now you can see the little RX next to Jupiter. That's retrograde. So Jupiter's turned retrograde. That retrograde's happening towards the end of June this year. And this starts moving us toward the full moon of the cycle where the manifestation occurs. And this is where we will see essentially right here, you can see it. Around late August, you'll see the sun opposed to Jupiter. And then we start to see the same tension that was present today in the full moon between the sun and moon across the Leo Aquarius axis. You'll see that repeated with the sun in Leo opposite Jupiter in Aquarius. So you're going to, if you literally take note of what's happening right now in your life that falls in line with the sun Jupiter symbolism we're talking about today, and then track it out and watch how it develops and watch what kind of fruit falls off the vine in about late August, you'll be a long ways to understanding how important these synodic cycles are. And it's a way that you'll never forget it, and you'll probably always keep it in your practice to track these cycles. So at any rate, the next part of the cycle, just in case you're curious, goes like this. The sun is then going to go and hit another trine to Jupiter. See, now it's in Libra, so it's heading into the trine. And as that trine perfects, Then what's going to happen is Jupiter's going to station. See, it's just hitting the trine right now, 22 and 22. And then right after, not shortly after that, it's not always right away, but like right after that trine is made, then Jupiter turns direct. Here you can see it right here. There's the retrograde, or there's the trine, and then we'll just go forward, station, turns direct. So you can see it just like that. Then the sun will come back all the way around, closing in on Jupiter, and it will make another conjunction. And that conjunction will happen next spring in March of 2022. You can see the two of them getting together, and the synodic cycle begins again. So now, if you want to know the seeds of a cycle, you have to look at everything that's happening at the time of the opening of the cycle. Well, this is a pretty powerful opening for Jupiter and the sun. There's a lot of ramifications right now, decisions that are being made and things that are being dealt with karmically, you could say, that are going to have quite the shelf life. And the reason for that is that it's happening as a full moon is forming in Leo, which amplifies the idea that there's a kind of dynamic tension between Leo and Aquarius. We'll talk about what that means later. And it's also being T-squared by Mars, right? And it's happening as Venus is conjoining Pluto. So those are all really dynamic things to be happening at the seeding of a Jupiter-Sun cycle. I just wanted to give everybody that picture so that you have a sense of it. But in the meantime, again, just goes to show, if you listen to my video at the beginning of the week, Venus is conjoining Pluto today. And that's had a big role to play this week. Go back and listen to that video if you want more on that conjunction that's forming today. I talked yesterday about Jupiter at the heart of the sun on its own. And today what I want to do is elaborate upon this configuration that's forming. You have Jupiter at the heart of the sun, a rebirth moment for Jupiter being amplified by a full moon in Leo, and also by the conflicting energy of Mars in Taurus. So what kinds of issues can come up around this? Now, I'm going to zoom out and kind of go into my sermons from the stars mode today. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because really it gets down to understanding how we can handle spiritually, intellectually, psychologically, how can we handle the rebirth of the sun, the rebirth of Jupiter at the heart of the sun, when the potential for this moment is to be very controversial, to have elements of conflict involved. And what are those kinds of conflicts? And I'm going to sort of interpret them very broadly today and zoom out a bit, as you guys know I like to do from time to time. So here's a few things to remember. Let's just talk about a baseline. One of the baselines of Jupiter and the sun is that Jupiter represents, I said this yesterday, Jupiter broadly represents order. Whether that's the order of an institution or democracy or the legal system or a religious institution or the way that you hold your life together through the practices of wellness that you personally might have, Jupiter is the bringer of unity and cosmic order. And that order doesn't have to be like a Saturnine order. I kind of made that distinction yesterday. This is an order that gives us a sense that there's cohesion, beauty, justice, and truth within the cosmos. And the truth is that although I am a person of faith, and Jupiter, of course, is a planet of faith, we place our faith in the idea that that is actually the way reality is, that reality is held together with justice, beauty, goodness, and truth. And that everything that, let's say, deviates from that, even the things that appear to lack those kinds of qualities, still have a place. They still have meaning, and they still find a role to play within that greater order, beauty, justice, and truth. And that the one who learns to see like that is the sage of steady mind. Jupiter, of course, called among other titles, Jupiter called guru. And the guru is a sage. And the sage is the one who learns to see even those elements that are most rejectable or unfortunate, or that seem to deviate from truth, beauty, justice, and goodness, that they're able to see them as a part of that cosmic harmony. And that's the that's the tall task that we're faced with when Jupiter and the sun conjoin, because when Jupiter and the sun conjoin, there's going to be a breakdown of rules or of ethics or of order or of the sense that everything is holding together. And then this need to recreate or restore our faith or or in some cases, for example, Jupiter Sun can point to people who are reformers, who work within companies or religious institutions or within the tradition of your own family or your own culture, to be someone who restores unity from within, despite the appearances or blemishes of the appearances of darkness or those things that seem to deviate from cosmic harmony. So Jupiter Sun can be the sign of reformation, of the restoration of faith, of the need to recreate balance and order. But it's also a picture of the inevitable decline and decay and distrust and cynicism that grows inside of us in relation to leaders or institutions, and part of that is, again, from the ancient standpoint, the standpoint of ancient mysticism, because we live in a world that it takes some effort to live consciously in alignment with that cosmic beauty, that cosmic justice, that cosmic harmony. It takes a conscious effort for societies to live in that. What to speak of individuals, right? So, um, there's so Jupiter Sun is always going to be about the way in which uh, someone or something falls short, the way in which some kind of rule needs adjusting, the way in which rules are taken advantage of, the way in which there are failures and people or leaders or ideals fall from their pedestals, and then this need for the recreation of unity and harmony. And I think there's a lot of that in the air lately. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. How do we deal with the feeling that we have been betrayed by our ideals, our beliefs, our leaders, our systems? Like how do we deal with that? And in particular, I'm going to go to what some of the ancient sages from the yogic tradition and draw on things that were said from mystics in the West as well. But I'm going to try to talk about that today because I think that that's the message that I know that I've been needing lately and that I've been going to in my own daily bhajan, my own daily sadhana. So that's what I have to share today. So a few things there tends to be a few things from the yogic standpoint that make this transit very difficult for us. One is that let's talk about just the human tendency that we have to crave certain things. Usually, I mean, on the most basic level, it's going to be a material something. It's going to be money, or it's going to be a better house, or better sex, or better body, or it's something that we crave is very material in nature. And the truth is that we end up becoming disappointed by, or we end up suffering from the very thing that we possess. Originally out of desire, this will satisfy me. We come to possess it, we hold it, and then in time, because all things in time work this way, all things in time participate in eventual degeneration, we suffer from the very thing that we once wanted, that we once desired. We suffer from what we possess on that level. This is a basic truth that ancient mystics who practiced philosophy, whether they were Stoics or, sort of coming from the Hermetic or Pythagorean or Platonic traditions, believed very deeply. Also, this is clearly evident in the Eastern traditions as well. So we suffer from the very things that we think will make us happy, that we drive toward with such vigor in any material sense, because they eventually degenerate. They become hard to maintain, or eventually they can fall apart and we can be very disappointed. And then, there's always that flip side. So that's one thing to remember. That's one thing to remember about our own nature, because when it comes to Jupiter and the sun, on the combustion side of Jupiter and the sun, that thing that we have sought to possess or that we have obtained that we thought would bring us happiness, whether it's a person or an idea, or whether it is anything that we think is great or that gives us a sense of righteousness or that gives us a sense of goodness and truth, that is temporary by nature, that is not that's fleeting, that we haven't taken the time to recognize as one of many endless passing things in this world, will eventually be the source of our suffering. So it's really important to remember that, because if we don't keep that in mind, the combustion side of a Sun-Jupiter conjunction can feel like a really deep level of disappointment or disillusionment. We want the object of our desire, but we suffer the way in which let me rephrase this. We also want to be the object of other people's desire. We want to be popular. We want to be smart. We want to be talented. We want to be thoughtful or sensitive or whatever it is that we want to be. And I can't tell you how many times, I work with people every day doing astrology, and one of the things that people say to me the most is, I don't understand why this person or that person doesn't value me more. And so many times when I talk to people, what I hear and I see in myself too is this underlying desire to be desired, to be loved, to be craved, right? But the problem is that we suffer that in the same way. We suffer the way in which, as the object of other people's desire, we will fall down or disappoint those who have relished us. Right? This is something that I feel like I've gotten a crash course on in the past year as my YouTube channel has really grown. At first, I started realizing no matter what kind of video I did and how nice I thought it was, there was always going to be like 6 to 10 thumbs down. You know what I mean? Like 6 to 10 people who were just like, nah, like I think you suck, And every day I would read the comments, and I would lose sleep, and I would be really upset when people would say what I felt like were like mean or nasty things. Even if there was a kernel of truth to what people would say, I would take away the hurt. And then as I was reflecting on that more and more and talking to my gurus about it, one of the things that I came to realize, and I think we can all relate to this is why I'm saying it, is that if we get too attached to being the object of desire for other people, one of the surefire ways that will kick back to us or feedback to us in time will be that we will suffer deeply when other people don't like us or don't relish us, or we let people down, or we fail, or we disappoint. And so the same can be said for us as individuals. We sometimes are just going to fall short, and we are going, if we want to be the object of desire, then we should be very clear that by that, the other side of that coin is that we will be the object of suffering if we desire to be relished by others. So that's just part of it. It's just part of the learning curve. These are things to keep in mind with Sun Jupiter as well, because Sun Jupiter is often about on the combustion side before the rebirth, is about the way in which sages, leaders, the ideals that we project onto people end up letting us down. We put people on pedestals to knock them off later, or for them to fall off from them later, or something like that. And if we desire to be put up on that pedestal in any way, however subtle it may be, we're also going to suffer when we fall off a lot more. Right. And because we're human. We also, this is a third thing that can pertain to the Sun and Jupiter, which is that we sometimes crave salvation. And this is a whole different order of desire. But it's a desire nonetheless that becomes really problematic. When we crave material salvation, what I mean by that is when we crave liberation from suffering itself. Because if you think about all of this, it becomes clear why people like the Buddha and Jesus, Black Elk, so many great spiritual teachers, Teresa of Avila, You see great teachers telling us all around the world in so many different traditions that this is why in this material world, if we don't choose a path of spiritualization, which does not mean we reject the world, it means we spiritualize our relationship with it. And if we don't do that, then the nature of this world is suffering. The nature of this world is it's like a hamster wheel. We just go around and around with craving things or wanting to be the object of what other people crave, and then suffering the exact results of those desires or those possessions or of being relished. So people have told us this is the cycle of samsara. This is the cycle of illusion and suffering. And if we come to terms with it, there's another subtle desire that comes in, and that is to be alleviated from it. We suddenly say, well, this is kind of a rat race, and I'd like to be free from it. You know, I'd like to be free from it. I don't want to suffer anymore. I don't want to have desires anymore. I don't want to have objects of desires. I don't want to be the object of other people's desire. I want to eliminate all of this. It's like, can somebody please just turn this off now? Right. And that may get camped in some pretty glorious packaging, or that may get packaged in some nice looking ribbons and bows, right? We can say, I want to become enlightened. I want to be a sage. I want to eliminate my tendencies to desire these things or to be the object of desires. That's what I want. I want to be free from the suffering associated with all of these things. We want to be righteous. We want to be clean. We want to be saintly. We want to be heroic. We want to be accomplished spiritually. So we take, so then we take up those things as our desires. And I'm not saying that those desires aren't better in some ways than, just wanting to, I don't know, just take a big, huge bag of gummy bears and just shove your face in it. You know what I mean? Like I would probably think that someone who wants to be sort of spiritually free from suffering and they're really hankering to be a saint is like better than someone who just can't stop thinking about Sour Patch Kids. But, at the end of the day, this is still problematic. So we want to be righteous. We want to be clean. We want to be heroic. We want to be accomplished spiritually. But behind all of this is still, I want, I want, I want. I need, I need, I need, I desire, I desire, I desire. And that's another problematic piece in all of this, because behind all of this is the desire to be someone all pure, all righteous, all clean, all spiritual, rather than being a soul, rather than being just who we are, not someone great, but just a soul. So, and again, with the sun and Jupiter, one of the reasons that this can become a part, this particular spiritual, let's call it almost a spiritual materialism, a spiritual lust. And again, there may be gradations. Maybe it's better to feel this way than it is, again, to like dive into the goodies. But still, this becomes problematic. The reason for this is that in short, what do the yogic scriptures say? The yogic scriptures say that, in short, the reason that this is problematic is because behind this is, rather than the desire to be a loving servant of our source, who is the perfect embodiment of beauty, cleanliness, power, goodness, truth, modesty, patience, compassion. The source has all of those qualities in infinite abundance. We have those qualities in minute abundance and according also to our own unique nature. And so one of the problems in wanting to just be free from all the suffering in the world is that underneath that is oftentimes a rejection of ourselves and a desire to become the all-powerful, the omniscient, the all-good, the all-pure, like that. And what we say in Bhakti is that the cure to all of these things is to replace the desire to be free from suffering with the desire to love and serve. So that rather than thinking I'll solve my suffering by becoming all pure, all good, all knowledgeable, all compassionate, all perfect, that, and because, by the way, we then suffer by the methods that we choose, which will all end up becoming some form of self-flagellation. We end up suffering in that way because we're saying, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you've got to become better. All of that is replaced when we say, my true nature as a spirit soul is that I'm part and parcel of my divine source, and I'm here to love and serve. And my own uniqueness of character, my own beauty, the truth inherent in me, the goodness and purity inherent in me can't come out unless I take myself out of the center and put others and put my source at the center, and I become a loving servant. Then, wildly, paradoxically, the most beautiful idiosyncratic things about us start to appear. They start to manifest, they start to come out naturally. That's what purifies us. Why am I saying this? Because when the sun gets together with Jupiter on the combust side is the tendency to get on a high horse thinking I need to do something to make myself righteous, or I'm in the righteous position here, or it comes the disillusionment with faith practices or religious or spiritual leaders or institutions or things that have let us down or failed us. And we say, well, you know what? I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm going to be the source of goodness, or I'm going to be, you know, we kind of, we get frustrated and we get disillusioned. And then as a result, we often throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then we take on this task of becoming the all righteous, the all clean, the all knowing, etc. And this doesn't work. This is something that I find myself suffering from over and over and over again. As soon as I get disillusioned with someone else, I'm losing track of the plank in my own eye. That's a big part of Jupiter and the sun, because there's a lot of sort of puritanical, self-righteous zeal that can come behind on the combustion side. Look at how wrong you are. Look at how right I am. Because I'm made right because I know you're wrong. And someone else may really be wrong. Some system may have really failed us. Some institution may have really fallen apart or not lived up to the task. But the maneuver that says, I see that, and that's bad, and then we take pride in ourselves as a result of being able to call it out or diagnose it or analyze it or whatever. And that's a real temptation in a moment like this. But where does it leave us? It leaves us on the path of having to become the all righteous, the all clean, the all pure, the all powerful, the all knowing. And nobody can live up to that. But what we can live up to is being a spirit soul that takes ourself out of the center, that loves, that forgives, that's patient, that's kind, and that serves others, that forgives, and that sees ourselves not at the center. And that a result of our putting things in the center that shouldn't be is that when they fall off, then we put ourselves in the center. And that's the vicious game of spiritual ambition. So anyway, I want to read you guys a few things that are important to me that have really helped me on these notes. Flaws and faults in life, whether it's a flaw or fault in a government or a justice system or a leader or a spiritual institution or within ourselves or our families or our jobs or within groups that we belong to of any kind, within cultures, within races, within genders or sexes or non-genders and non-sexes, all of the faults and flaws that we see, how we relate to them is really what makes or breaks our spiritual success in life. This is something that I feel really strongly about, that I've learned from not only just what my teachers have taught, but how I've watched them live and respond to difficult things. One of the things that's hard for us is that it is really, really difficult It's really, really difficult when we see things that are supposed to be emblems of cosmic harmony, truth, order, beauty, and goodness, where we want to place our faith. We want to place our faith that those things are real. And when things or people or places that are supposed to represent that fail us in some ways, we have two choices. We can either take it as a moment um, to sort of judge and to condemn, and then to build ourselves up by contrast of having the righteous position, or we can forgive. When we're forced to forgive our faults and our flaws and those in others, especially when we fall down or fall short, we grow in our capacity to appreciate ourselves and to appreciate others, to see the good and to see the divine in everything, which ironically is what restores faith and harmony and order. What restores faith and harmony and order, in other words, is not the exclusion of bad. It's the ability to see with equal vision the presence of deviations within the whole. Without acts of mercy, compassion, patience, and forgiveness, we can't see the harmony. We can't see the grace, the beauty, the justice, the goodness, and the truth that is always there, that never goes away, that is reliable, that is trustworthy, that we can put our faith in. It's moments where people fall short and forgiveness and mercy is an option to us, that our ability to see and participate in justice, truth, beauty, balance, goodness in the cosmos and in ourselves presents itself. It's an opportunity to grow cosmic order when someone or something fails us by virtue of forgiving and being compassionate, patient, and tolerant by seeing the good in other people. Well, because when we live by the sword, we die by the sword, right? Isn't that the truth? And what is the sword? Well, I would put it like this. I would say that the sword is the attempt to be made good or righteous or clean by having a keen and far-reaching grasp of what is wrong with things, people, institutions, life, humanity, and ourselves. I know what's wrong. I know what the conspiracy is here. I know where the bad guys are. I know what's wrong with the system. I know why Mother Earth is hurting. I know why religions don't work and why they fail. And I know what's wrong with yoga in the West. And I know what's wrong with democracy. And I know what's wrong with our legal system. And like that, on and on. But the problem is, again, that this doesn't enhance this position of knowing what is wrong and being able to see it alone doesn't enhance our spiritual life, and it doesn't enhance our ability to see and participate in the ongoing flow of cosmic beauty, order, truth, goodness, and so forth. The attitude that we can take, in contrast, is found all over the yogic scriptures, the yogic texts, the wisdom traditions all over the world. And it's that I live to be corrected. I live to serve. I live to love. I live to release judgments. I live to pardon. I take joy in the ability to patiently suffer the results of my own karma. Not just that I patiently suffer. I take joy in patiently suffering the results of my own karma. I take joy in it. I take an attitude that everything could have been worse. And I take joy in that attitude. Or I may have deserved worse than what just happened, and I take joy in that attitude. And if we do this over and over again, not in big moments, not in big statements, but in simple, small, micro moments of patience, mercy, forgiveness, grace, joy, humility, and selfless service for the sake of love, love to others, love to ourselves, it's not that we're turning a blind eye to what falls short. It's that we're turning a compassionate eye toward it. There's a big difference. So, for love to be at the center, we have to remove ourselves from the center, and we have to do so gracefully. We don't just remove ourselves from the center by saying, it's bad that you're at the center, stupid ego, like that. We remove ourselves from the center, from wanting to be the center, from our own desires and selfish interests, however simple or grandiose they may be, to be at the center, we take it away one slow, graceful, tiny, compassionate, and forgiving act at a time over a long time, day in and day out, water washing away jagged stones. And as we do so, our ability to feel thanksgiving, our ability to feel love, and our ability to appreciate others and to appreciate the world and to appreciate everything around us, even though we can see faults and flaws, despite it, that grows. We become dancers, singers, lovers, and we do so in ways that are, again, not at all about turning a blind eye, but about turning a compassionate eye. If we can't do this for ourselves, what hope do we have? So it starts with ourselves. It starts little by little. Where we are going to be knocked off our own pedestals that we put ourselves on, right? One of the things that I've come to realize about my life is that I now realize that the greatest blessing that I've ever had in my life is that I've been gifted with deeply flawed but beautiful teachers. Let me tell you a little bit about them. So I was raised a Methodist minister's son, and my father had some what I would just call a fall down. And you know, he was a really fantastic minister who taught a lot of people how to love God, how to serve, how to love one another, how to love thy neighbor. And he was someone who also fell down. And for a long time, I thought, you know, his fall is a reflection on all of these messages and teachings. And so I threw them out. I threw them out and I threw my dad out. And then over time, gradually, I came to realize that my dad could be both a wonderful emissary of the divine in the way that he was as a teacher and a minister, and he could also be a flawed human being. And then I couldn't get there until I realized that I was essentially the same way. I failed as a teacher. I failed as a mentor for kids. I failed, I was a youth pastor in a church, and I was, you know, drinking and smoking and trying to get laid with, on the side, like not with the kids, of course, but with, people. I was partying on the side of being a youth pastor. And I was doing that at the same time that I was trying to sort of denounce what my father did and distance myself from him. And so it came full circle. I was like, well, you know, I'm a flawed teacher. I have a lot of mistakes. So I worked with shamans, met numerous different ayahuasca shamans, some of whom I watched fall down in different ways. The same exact shamans who had at times been deeply instrumental to some of the best and most healing insights and experiences I'd ever had in my life. So, what would I be? Where would I be if I threw the baby out with the bathwater every time a shaman or a pastor or a father had failed me? What to speak of other people, too? I had professors. I went to 2 graduate school programs, and I had professors that were heroes to me intellectually, and some of them let me down in different ways, right? I have had several astrology teachers. Robert Schmidt was is an astrology teacher of mine. He was also a flawed human being, and he let me down at times. Yet he's easily one of the most important people in my life that I've ever had as an astrology teacher. I've had numerous mentors that have let me down in different ways. I wouldn't be who I am without them, right? I've had, even in the yogic path, I've had many yoga teachers who, if I have looked at with a scrutinizing eye, I can find things to criticize, and they've let me down in different ways. I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have healthy sadhana in my life that keeps me sane, that's helped me to become a better father, a better husband, without them. And if I look at myself with the same eye of compassion, I know that it's true. If I can't be someone who is a bit of a mess, a bit of a walking contradiction, then I'm not going to be able to I'm not going to be able to receive benefits from just about anyone or anything if I can't from myself. So this Jupiter Sun combustion, it comes around, and I see it time and time again over 10 years of doing this. When the Jupiter Sun comes around, it's as though it's really easy to point the finger. Oh, look at that hypocrite. Look at how flawed this is. Look at how flawed that is. One of my guru's guru said, we have to realize that there's a temptation in spiritual life to try to create virtue and righteousness by being like flies that land on open wounds and open sores. And we mistake that our enlightenment about faults and flaws and our ability to see them quite clearly is what starts to elevate us spiritually. But actually, we should be like honeybees that land on flowers and that suck out the nectar and the essence, that we see the good. That's a practice. It's not just a meme. It's not just not just a dead, beat up cliche that we use to avoid the difficulties of the world. It's not polypositivism. It's hard. It's really hard work to live like that. That's been my experience, starting with myself. It's really hard work to not mistake spiritual life, service, and love toward the divine for the desire to be the source of all goodness, all compassion, all sensitivity. It's really hard to not want to be someone or something spiritually special, but to really just love and serve and forgive and love and serve and forgive. I find that it is against, it is so often against my nature to want to be that way. And so if I can't forgive that about myself, I won't truly I won't live into my actual nature. My actual nature is that I'm a servant. I take great joy in giving love more than needing to be at the center of receiving it from other people. And when I take that attitude, I find that the crazy result is that I end up feeling like I'm receiving way more than I'm giving. That's weird. It just happens that way. So that's my path. That's bhakti. That's my path. And that's how I deal with these kinds of transits. And I wanted to talk about it today because it just been on my mind a lot lately. I've been looking at, the transits and seeing a lot of people, including myself, having pretty clear views of what's wrong with others or with themselves or with the world or with, I don't know, whatever, the stock market. you know what I mean? So I want to read you guys 2 verses. I'm going to expand upon them just a little bit, and then I'll be done for the day. The first one, both come from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a bhakti yoga text. I hope you guys are enjoying a little sermon from the stars today. That's what I like to call them. So this is the 4th canto, 19th chapter, 34th verse. And the idea here is that there is a king who has made for a very great ceremonial sacrifice. Feels very Jupiter Sun. It's a big, huge fire sacrifice, a big, massive fire sacrifice. And this is done to please God. This is a big sacrifice that's done to please Source, to please divinity, to please Vishnu, to please God. And it gets all messed up. He doesn't correctly execute the ceremonial rites and procedures. And then a sage talks to him in his disappointment and his agitation, frustration, and anger that he failed and didn't get it right, that he wasn't pure, that the holiness ceremony went off the rails. And he says, "My dear king, do not be agitated and anxious because your sacrifices have not been properly executed due to providential impediments. Kindly take my words with great respect. We should always remember that if something happens by providential arrangement, we should not be very sorry. The more we try to rectify such reversals, the more we enter into the darkest region of materialistic thought. Well, thank you. That is so, thank you. That is so relieving, because I've noticed that I try to execute things very perfectly every day. I'm like the king who's trying to have my ducks in a row and to have cleanliness, goodness, and a kind of righteous glow to my life, because I value those things, but I also take pride in them. And taking pride is the problem. In this instance, the king was taking pride in making a great sacrifice and a great religious offering to God. Kindly take my words with great respect. We should always remember that if something happens, in this case, something messed up, your sacrifice or your ceremony, that it's providence, that it was actually that you can see the fact that that got messed up as the actual presence of the divine. That's the voice of the divine speaking. So you don't need to feel very sorry about it. And the more that you try to rectify it and fix it as if it wasn't the divine itself that led to the problems executing your righteousness, you're just going to go deeper and deeper into a sinkhole of problems, my friend. you know? So there's the first verse. All right, so the second one comes from the 10th canto. The 10th canto in the 14th chapter, Brahma's prayers to Lord Krishna. And this is the 8th verse. He says, "My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim." Another really beautiful verse. Let's reread it. "My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with your heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim." In other words, if we really want liberation from suffering, then one of the things that we do is we patiently live through the failures, not only of ourselves, but of others, forgiving and offering gratitude, respect, love, patience, kindness, and offering to our divine source constant prayer of thanksgiving for everything that's happening. That when we do that, that's what it means to become free from suffering. That's how it actually becomes, as the quote says, our rightful claim. Trying to get there through effort is not going to cut it. The more that we make effort at the center of our desire to be free or spiritually happy, the more that we are going to not so patiently and not so easily suffer the consequences that come to us. And they will, because there's still selfish motivation underneath the surface. So when the difficult things come, especially our disillusionments, our disappointments with people, teachers, institutions like that, Jupiterian stuff, the order of the world just doesn't look very nice to us. Well, but we were born into this world for a reason. We're here in this body for a reason, to witness and see these things. And if we can take an appreciating attitude, then we will start to see and experience the very thing that we think is lacking in ourselves and others in the world. And that's how the rebirth of Jupiter and the sun takes place. So that's my 2 cents for the day. This is an overflow of what I've been working through in my own life. And again, when I was born, just so that you guys can know how this shows up in my birth chart, I was born with a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Many of us who were born in like 80, 81, right around there. And it was born in the sixth. I was born with that in the sixth house, with Saturn ruling my ninth and 10th place. Saturn ruling the ninth, the place of religion, spirituality, academics. So the 10th, career. Jupiter in that house with Saturn in a sixth house, which is associated with conflict. The sixth house was called the joy of Mars, and a place of conflict, strife, disease, sickness. And so my experience of ninth house religious teachers and teachings and systems of order and justice, Jupiter, Saturn stuff combined, has been conflicted for me throughout my life. I've dealt with a lot of disappointments around these kinds of people and institutions and myself, and confusions, and it's felt like an embattled part of my life. And what I'm presenting to you today is what I'm working on in relation to it. This is not where I am, it's where I'm trying to be, you know? So maybe it's useful for you too. I hope so. And I hope that you guys really enjoy this full moon. It's a good time to restore your faith, not because you rebuild a new thing in a literal sense, but because there's never any need for a rationalization or a justification, or you don't need anything but a little bit of confidence in the heart, a little bit of absurd, ungrounded confidence in the heart to say, I am going to give my trust back to myself, to the cosmos, to the universe. I'm going to put my faith in the goodness of others, in the goodness of things. There's never a reason that you need it. There's a great opportunity right now as Jupiter and the Sun are coming back together. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And I'm just going to think of myself like, or at least over the next couple of days, that my work is to be like the honeybee. I have stupid faith. Fine. I just have stupid faith, and I'm going to look for the essence and the goodness around me. And that's what I'm going to do. That is my spiritual activism. So, again, hope that this was useful for you all today. I hope that you have a really beautiful weekend. Stay tuned tomorrow. I will be talking about the astrology of February. So we'll get back into the nuts and bolts of all the karmic fluctuations, and see what's happening for the month ahead. And then again, horoscopes will be out on Monday. So that's what I've got for you guys today. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon. Bye, everyone.